Welcome everyone who's tuning in. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, maybe one minute. But thanks for being with us here on a Wednesday night evening. I'm all screwed up from the time change, and it's still light outside, which actually I appreciate. So I'll shut up now. Welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a few moments. Okay, let's do it. Welcome everyone. This is WeHo Reads, Writing Together, Pomodoros, Marinara, and Friendship. I hope you brought a snack because I think it's going to get tasty up in here. I am so pleased. Well, who am I? I'm Cody Cisco, executive editor of Bookswell, which is producing the WeHo Reads series on behalf of the City of West Hollywood. We thank the city for their support for the arts. And now I want to introduce our guests for tonight. It's going to be a special one. So we have Jade Chang, author of two critically acclaimed novels, What a Time to Be Alive and The Wangs versus the World, which won the VCU Gabel First Novelist Award. And
Hello.
what's fun is doing this introduction when you're like in the same place as your writer friends. I don't think there's a better visual metaphor for that. Um, Next, we have Angela Flournoy, author of The Wilderness, a national bestseller that was longlisted for the National Book Award, joining us from New York. Angela, thanks so much for being here.
Hello.
Asia Gabel, sitting next to Jade Chang. Asia is the author of the novel The Lightbreakers and The Ensemble, and a screenwriter. Welcome.
Hi.
Chen Ho, author of Fiona and Jane, named one of Time's 100 must-read books of 2022, among other accolades. Welcome, Jean. And Xuan Juliana Wang, author of the short story collection Home Remedies, winner of the California Book Award for First Fiction. Welcome. So I'm super excited. We have such a discussion here for you. I hope it goes off the rails in the best way possible because these are five friends who create time to write together and they're going to share their story with us tonight. Before we get into it, though, I'm going to turn this over briefly to Mike Che from the City of West Hollywood's Arts Division.
Hi, thanks, Cody. My name is Mike Che. I work for the City of West Hollywood, and this is our literary series. We, of course, want to thank our City Council for supporting this series monetarily and with staff. And we do want to take a moment to acknowledge that the land upon which the City of West Hollywood is located is the unceded seized territory of the Gabrielano Tongva and Gabrielano Teach peoples. I am so thrilled about tonight's event. I read an article in the LA Times several months ago about Jade Chang and all five of these authors coming together and writing together and being friends. And I just thought it was the most wonderful thing because writing can be such a lonely thing. And I've been familiar with Jade's book, Wangs versus the World, but through that, I read a few of your other books and they're all hilarious and so powerful. And so this is going to be just a wild ride. I'm very excited for this. And also, I think this is possibly the most Asian faces that we have had on WeHo Reads before. So I'm super thrilled. Of course, I am Chinese American. And our current poet laureate, who's finishing out her final year, is also Asian. Jen Chang is our fifth and current West Hollywood Poet Laureate. And she's gonna begin tonight's event with a short poem that she's written for the occasion.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Jen Chang, and I'm honored to serve as the first Asian American lesbian poet laureate in the state of California, so it is fantastic to be amongst such great company. I wrote a variation on one of my city poems, Recipe for Creativity, Blessed by Ghosts of the Great. And tonight I'm honoring you five by calling this riff Recipe for Creativity, Blessed by the Women of Little Doms. Crack open the notepads, flip open those laptops in sync. Twist that timer for that Pomodoro focus. Share some bread and pasta on your break. Chat about your problems, we've got your back. Get to know each other's personal lives beyond writing. Build a friendship so we feel nurtured and supported. Post-game that work session by going to book talks and develop that powerful bond. Riff and find pleasure in stories as writers in community together. Thank you for your inspiration. I was delighted to read your LA Times story, and I hope you all come and hang out with me for April National Poetry Month. We have programs online, including interviewing and in conversation with California State Poet Laureate Lee Herrick, and we have some programs at the WeHo Library. Hope to see you all and follow us on WeHo Arts.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Jen.
Jen. Yeah, and thank you. Cody's going to moderate tonight, but I just think this is so fun, and I've got my beverage, non-alcoholic, of course, for tonight. But I feel like it's going to be like a night at Little Dom's. So take it away. Thank you.
I hope so. I mean, if I was really on my game, I would have like ordered in pasta for everyone in their home, so we could be having, some pasta right now. But Jen, thank you so much. I'm really excited about your conversation with Lee Herrick. It's going to be great. So to start us off tonight, I'd love to set the scene a little bit for the writers here. Bring us into the restaurant, into your community, into your group, into your sisterhood. Maybe by sharing one memory you have of your time, together at Little Dom's. Plus, like great promo for Little Dom's. Wow. Um, I'll just call on someone. Jade, how would you like to start?
Sure, sure. But first, Jen, thank you so much. That was such an honor. I have never had a poem written for a friendship group of mine. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Yeah, all the poets I dated and nobody wrote a
No
poem
one wrote
for
you
me.
up. Oh, finally, everything's gonna change now.
Yeah.
It's gonna be all odes
Yeah.
from now on. Um, I think that I'm actually going to refer to a friend of ours who did also join us, but did also join us for some of those work sessions, but is not here tonight. But there is a moment where we had several other friends who kind of cycled in and out occasionally, and I think there was a moment where I was like, oh, this is really a sustainable practice. And that was when we were all there in this back booth at Little Dom's, and just so that you don't think we were taking up space during the dinner rush, there are not as many people there during lunch. We would generally get there around 10, and then no one would really come for lunch until like noonish, and then they'd be kind of not that packed by 1:32. So it wasn't full of people wanting to sit there, but I think when I realized that working together was really sustainable was when our mutual friend Emma introduced the concept of the agenda, which was something that, during the periods in which we were supposed to be focused on writing, which was generally 40 minutes at a time, if we had any gossip we wanted to share, any questions we wanted to ask, anything like that, we could write it on the agenda. And I feel like the first time that happened was very significant.
Yeah, it keeps you from interrupting
Yeah.
the
The actual
Pomodoro
work
session. I think for me, the minute I realized that this was special was that first Christmas when Angela's
Oh.
brought in fudge for the
Yeah,
crew,
that was delicious
for the wait
fudge.
staff.
Hmm.
And they were so like grateful, and then I was like, oh, we're regulars. Like
Yeah.
I think I didn't realize that before, that like I thought we kind of just came here and they were like, there's those weird writers in the back booth, but
Hmm.
then I understood that they thought it was cool that we were creating something in the back booth on the schedule, like, and that was like it was like a symbiotic relationship, which I think has proven
Hmm.
out since that article came out. They've been just
Hmm.
so generous with
Yeah.
their space and grateful for the coverage, even though they're an institution in LA.
Yes, they have no shortage of very loyal
Yeah,
fans.
I recommend becoming a regular somewhere if you're trying to write in public. It's really helpful.
All right. Hi. So here, it'll be our turn. Okay, you go first.
Okay, my one memory is I think when Tom Hardy was there trying to get a movie made. I think we were eavesdropping on their conversation. He was trying to I think like try to get a director to hire him for something. And I feel like we, as writers, we were like getting snippets of the conversation. We were like noticing like what the director is wearing, what like Tom's body language was. And I was like, this is so fun. Like this is what I would do on my own. But then like together we were like, we had this whole like I felt like the whole scenario was like playing out because we were all so observant and like noticing the details. We're like, oh, who has the power in this conversation? What's trying to
Hmm.
happen? I just love that.
Yeah, it's a great place to eavesdrop, which I think all novelists love. You
Yeah.
know, it's really inspiring to just hear people, whether they're trying to pitch their pilots or just like talking about their
Yeah.
relationship drama.
Trying to get a director to come to their game night.
Mhm. I would say I think we talked about this in the article. Um, but I think a big reason why we started gathering was because this was coming out of the COVID era. So after 2020, when we were all, isolating, of course, I think we just wanted to like see each other more regularly. And so, because being a novelist is not the kind of job where you have like an office to go to, or it's not a regular 9 to 5 where you have coworkers, the five of us decided, why don't we just sort of have this regular schedule and treat it like a job? And we instituted this Pomodoro method so that we would actually get real work done. But it felt so nice just knowing that we can go to this place, this very welcoming atmosphere at Little Dom's, and know that I can see my friends at least 2, 3 times a week, and that I would, get to work on my novel. So it was just such a warm feeling after all the loneliness and isolation of 2020.
I think another thing that made that really special going to Little Dom's was that a good amount of us lived in walking distance, not all of us. Some of us lived on the other side of town. Some of us lived in West Hollywood. Um, but we not only became like regulars at Little Dom's, but then there were other places like up and down Hillhurst that we became like we just on the way to Little Dom's became regulars. And I really liked having consistency. I am a person who, if there is any way for me to be distracted and vary what I do in a day, I will latch onto it and then I just will not write any fiction. And so just having that expectation that, oh, people are going to be there and I am expected to be there, um, was really important to me. And also having something that I was willing to eat days in and out at a place. Because there are other places that, I have worked at, and you tolerate the food because they tolerate you writing there. But it was really a wonderful sort of pairing of like, I actually like the food and they seem to like us. So we were able to just be there for much longer and for more days in a row.
So I have so many questions, but I'll try to do them one at a time because otherwise it'll get chaotic. How did this start? I mean, you mentioned that it was coming out of COVID, so there was like pent up, maybe like loneliness, isolation, separation that you were trying to overcome to get together. But like, who had the idea? Like, what was the germ that led to it happening? Was it like a one-off and then it was so fun you had to do it again? Like, how did it start? And I asked this with a
With
lot of
Jade.
envy for for
It was
what you
Jade.
have.
It's definitely Jade.
Absolutely, Jade.
Yeah. And I think the
I
rest
wrote
of us were so skeptical because, writing, you have to have a lot of alone time and you have to sort of just like get feral. But Jade was the one, I think, because you had done this with your first book.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing also, all the rest of you have gotten an MFA or some kind of advanced writing degree. I never have. And so I've always kind of relied on having friends who are also writers to just be like, oh, yeah, there's other people out here who want to do the thing. And I did write pretty much all of the Wangs versus the World with a good friend, Margaret Wappler, who wrote an amazing novel called Neon Green. And yeah, she and I used to meet up and write all the time. And then when I started writing this book in earnest, What a Time to Be Alive, I was like, I need that again. I need friends who are also doing the same thing. And I knew that I could bully you all into making it work. But were you, I mean, I think most of you were somewhat skeptical from the beginning.
I was very skeptical. I don't like to talk to people like before I write. Usually I like to write first thing in the morning. So, but I had a child. So, I when we started these Pomodoros, I had a small child. So the idea that I had these like perfect controlled mornings that just didn't exist anymore. And so I had to figure out how to do whatever I had to do in the morning to like get my child out of the house and refocus. But I really thought that what I would just politely go to a few and then not go anymore. But Jade was very strict and made people work. And then it turned out that I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to be working here, then that's great because then I can just have an excuse to be hanging out all day. And I will say now that I'm back in New York, that's something I miss is that we were able to do Pomodoros, often at Little Dom's, but sometimes we met places where we were able to sit outside and work. And sitting outside to work, it's just not happening in New York for like 50% of the year. So I do miss that a lot.
So I want to talk a little bit about the structure and like what was it at the start and did that change? Like did it become more more rigid over time or more flexible? Like what when you showed up for the first time, what was it? Or how did it work?
I think when we first started, we were a little bit farther out from feeling like, oh God, we have to finish these novels soon, right? When we first started, we were a little bit more right in that phase of like, yeah, I gotta write another book, but let's like kind of slide into it. And so there was a little more equal parts hanging out and working. And then as it got more dire, I would say, we started to be a little stricter. And, some of us, I will not mention any particular names, but you can raise your hands if you feel called out. Some of us like to chat more than others. So, ooh, yeah, there's the hand.
Oh wait, who was
Angela
that?
loved keeping that talk in the middle of the Pomodoro, breaking the rules.
I believe in carrots and sticks, and being able to gossip is the carrot that I needed. And sometimes I just tried to get to that carrot a little early. And
This is why the agenda was really helpful. But yeah, I think once we really started to structure it a little bit more strictly, I think we all found it to be extremely productive. Yeah.
And then I think like at one point you and Angela had said, I think our books are going to come out in the fall of 25. And I hadn't gotten a date yet from my publisher, but I was like, it's got to be fall of 25 because then we were all on this side. Then it got more intense. Like we were pomodoring all the time and we were keeping to the schedule because we all had to finish the same deadline, which was really like helpful to not be alone in the intensity.
we all ended up doing at least one book event together, right? I feel like we did.
Yeah. Well, my book came out in 22, so it was so helpful and just like wonderful to have these four friends of mine who had already had their books come out in 28, you guys like 2018 and 2019. And then so in 2021 when we started working together, I was like gearing up for Fiona and Jane to come out. And so I was always asking you guys for advice, or just like you guys were talking me down from the ledge when I was feeling really anxious. So that for me was like, so, I mean, it feels like a million years ago now, 2021, when I was like doing all of that, but it was so like beautiful to have that support from you guys. Julie, you have to say something.
I don't want to.
There'll be more opportunities. So I want to ask a question about balancing because you talked about like that there's the writing portion. So those are like timed Pomodoros where it's like you're in your laptop, tap, 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 or with your notebook or whatever. And then there's also the eating and also the discussion. Like it sounds like well, I don't know. How do you balance those? Or what was how did you make it all fit?
Well, I feel like we actually didn't talk that much about the
book.
writing of it, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we didn't. I feel like we just like all of the things on our agenda were like really having nothing to do with our own writing, but it was just that like for those 45 minutes, we couldn't talk about those things. And we couldn't look, I would feel like, at home, I'd be like, oh no, I need to reference something, or like I need to like look at my notes or something. But it's like everybody's just typing. So I'm just like, for this 45 minutes, I'm just gonna keep drafting. And I felt like that really like adds up, like makes a difference, especially since like I was just really stuck on this book that I've been working on for years. And I feel like if left to my own devices, I might have just like never looked at it again. But like because everyone else was doing it, I was like, well, I might as well just do it for 45 minutes, and it just like it adds up and you're like, oh, I have something.
Do you use like Pomodoros when you're writing alone too, or was this just something that because the group was doing it, you would do it there and didn't take the technique to other parts of your practice?
I feel
I
like now I
tried
do
to.
Pomodoro for everything. Yeah. Like even like admin of my life. Just like 45 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And then it makes me feel like I've never done it before Jade forced us to do it. And now it's changed my life.
Mhm.
I will
That's
say one
really
of the
cool.
other things that
Changed mine.
made the structure really lovely, like the breaks and being able to talk, was that um there's a thunderstorm all of a sudden in New York City. It's crazy. But because we had fake spring, but now it's over and it's gonna be cold again. But I like we all knew each other, but we weren't like all really like I didn't know like how many siblings Asia had. Like I didn't know
Mm.
anything really like specifically about anyone. Maybe just Jean. And so in these breaks, it is really astonishing how having a little agenda about what to talk about during these breaks, we actually became like close friends in this way that feels like kind of hard to explain, but it was really lovely. And also this something that feels like the opposite of what you get out of writing. You like it's supposed to be solitary, and like if you make friends, that's after perhaps on book tour or whatever. But in the drafting, you're not supposed to also be able to like create friendships with people. But we did.
I think it's really reassuring to have a common goal with people. And I think it's really what we all kind of search for is to have some kind of shared purpose with people whose work you actually respect and right? And
Yeah.
whose effort you actually respect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to be in the trenches with someone too, but also I think a key component of this, and maybe Cody was going to ask this later, but like, was that we really don't talk about our
Yeah.
work while we're doing it. We talk about each other and our lives and pop culture in the agenda moments, but we really aren't there to workshop our work. That's sort of a separate thing. And that really helps like keep you in the headspace of drafting and then to be able to take these breaks and go back to drafting and take these breaks. And then if we need people to read things later, I mean, that's a separate thing. But I thought that was really helpful.
That's such an interesting boundary because one thing I notice is that like you've got a special kind of I'm not coming up with the right word, but almost like a hybrid. So I've been a part of a lot of writing groups where, it's like lots of people, everyone's kind of interacting on a professional level, but it's not like that personal. You're not like becoming besties at all. And so you have this like, close friendship developing within this group, but then you've also like kind of drawn boundaries around your writing material. Like you're not talking about it too, which gives some space and gives some, I don't know, privacy in the group. It's such a like I would never like if you were like I need to diagram exactly how this works on a whiteboard, never come up with all of these choices that you made, but the choices that you made seem to really make a difference in how the group gels and how it's sustainable. So I mean, I don't know if there's a question behind that to say like explain the genius, but like was there anything that you tried that didn't work? Like things that you brought in and then cut out or yeah.
Did we ever, I don't think we ever sort of verbalized we're not sharing work.
Yeah,
It
we didn't.
just,
No, it just kind of happened that way. We just didn't especially want to. I think also with a novel, it's a little different, right? Because you have such a long piece of work. And we did read each other's novels before they came out. We gave each other notes on our novels, but it was kind of separate from that writing process. We would often talk about like kind of more abstract questions about writing. We would talk about kind of how to shift a scene. We would talk about like what kind of dialogue is dumb and what kind isn't, I mean, there were definitely we would talk about writing. We just weren't workshopping our particular work in the moment.
Did you
I think that
bring
that helped with not feeling like there didn't feel like there was a transaction at play. Like it just felt like we all want to have a second book. We all need to write it. And so we're all just like we're helping each other, but we're helping ourselves. And it didn't feel like I never was like, oh, I can't go today because I haven't read these pages that Julie wanted me to read. Like I never felt any dread or obligation showing up to Little Doms.
Well, because I mean, at this point, we're talking about the books. I think our audience might want to hear a little bit from each of you, a little reading or a little context about the books you were working on or the books that you've published most recently. So we do have, I've got some time here. We can do mini readings if you would like, and then we can go back to the conversation after we've heard some of your words. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Cody, surprise us. Call on
Okay,
us.
okay.
Scare us. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say Jean.
Okay, hi. So I brought my book with me. Oh, it's like blurry. But this is my story collection, Fiona and Jane. It came out in 2022. So when I was working at Little Dom's with these guys, I had sold the book and I was working on edits with my editor. And so they saw me go through like, copy edits, line edits, page proofs. And as I already said, like they just gave me so much support and advice about how to stay sane during the publication process. So that was so lovely. So I'll just read uh, from the first story, which is called The Night Market. The book is about two best friends, two Taiwanese American women, and it spans about 20 years of their friendship, starting from when they're teenagers into their 20s and 30s. So it's about how they were so close, almost like sisters growing up, and then they have a drifting apart. Fiona moves to New York. She's very driven and ambitious. And Jane stays in LA. She's grieving the death of her father. And then in their 30s, they come back together and have to learn how to be friends again as adults. But I'll just read a little bit from the first story, which is from Jane's point of view. She goes to visit her dad, and she's in high school. So this is from the night market. My last evening in Taiwan, my father wanted to show me Shilling Night Market. We rode the subway, transferring at Taipei Main Station for the northbound Red Line. Saturday night, the market was jammed with people strolling up and down the arteries of the main thoroughfare. Baba and I dragged along with the crowd, pausing here and there to browse the wares. We'd made up from the fight in the car driving down Yamingshan yesterday, at least for now. He promised to rethink the new university contract and seriously consider coming back to the States for good. The air was saturated by the scent of grilled meat, custard pudding and red bean pies, propane fumes, and human sweat. Deep house music pumped out of every other storefront speaker as vendors shouted into megaphones pointed at the passing hordes. 2-for-1 ladies' cotton underwear, genuine leather sandals for men, Motorola flip phones, and locked here, DVDs, CDs. Come, take a look. At the food section in the back of the market, Baba stood in line to order us bowls of oyster vermicelli while I staked out seats at the communal table set up in the center of the stalls. We dipped into the noodles. The oysters floated on top, fat and glistening like polished jewels. Listen, May, there's one more person who wanted to see you before you leave, Baba said between bites. Okay, so I'll just stop there because it's a very, for the time limit. But in the rest of the story, she meets this new friend of her father's, and it really changes everything in their family.
I'm so glad you included a food a moment with the oysters because I mean we're talking about food all night here. I hope everyone's appetite's ready, and thank you, Jean, for sharing that.
Sure.
From Fiona and Jane, just so everyone knows, they can go out and buy it. Put the link in the chat to your website. Next up, Angela, it's late in New York, so maybe we'll get this done and then you can just chillax for the rest of the evening.
Well, so I'm just going to read, I don't think there's really any setup. My book, The Wilderness, came out in September, and I guess there is some setup. Just that it's about a group of friends, and it follows them from their 20s into their 40s, mostly in LA and in New York. And it is also kind of about the last 20 years of American life, but right now it's the early 2010s, and the friends are in the club. Desiree believed January to be the best dancer, her compact, curvy body reaching for nothing, yet every correct gesture found it. Monique, bless her heart, always seemed to be marching in place. Nakia was more performative, arms up in the air longer than they needed to be, hips ranging wide. She sometimes looked like she was hula hooping, but her confidence made it work. A kind of irony undergirded her dancing, and Desiree believed this to be because Nakia felt little to no sexual pressure here in this aggressively straight person's club. No need to use her dancing to promise or advertise anything to anyone, only perhaps to ward off certain ideas and advances. The club is a joke because of people pretending they don't want to just fuck, she'd said before. Every club except for the gay club and the strip club. She worked most weekends at her restaurant, so spending this night off here with Desiree instead of with one of her new queer friends, which she was making at a fast clip, thanks to her girlfriend Brandon, was meant to show Desiree how much she cared about her. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks for taking us to the club. We I don't get out that much anymore, so it's nice vicariously to visit. Okay. How about Asia? Why don't we go with you next?
Well, I forgot my book. So I'm gonna talk about my book for 1 minute. It's called Lightbreakers. It came out in November, and it is speculative literary fiction. So that means that it has an element of sci-fi in it. And I am a longtime lover of sci-fi, and I kind of never thought it was available to me as an MFA student to be able to write something in that genre until very late, until a few years ago. And I wrote a story about, this book is about a couple, Maya and Noah, who are married. For Noah, it's his second marriage. He had a previous marriage where his child in that marriage died and the marriage broke up. And so he meets Maya. He is a physicist, and he gets called to do to participate in a mysterious project in Marfa, Texas, that turns out to be time travel related. And his impulse to return to a past that is not particularly helpful for his present eventually drives Maya back to her past. But this time she literally goes back to Tokyo, where she's from, and has a sort of reckoning with her family and her ex-boyfriend there. And they must, over the course of the novel, find each other across time and space, find their way back to each other, and learn how to live in a new timeline, really. And I was interested in the sci-fi element, but I was also interested in looking at in writing a story that looks at how to love after great loss, and how to be with someone who's supposed to know you wholly without them ever really knowing what it was like at your lowest moment. And I wanted to write about Marfa, Texas, which is a place that I really love, and I wanted to write about Tokyo, and those were the kind of like obsessions, North Stars that those elements that kept me going through the whole process of writing this book.
That is wonderful. Thank you for sharing. A time travel romance sounds just what is needed right now. Time travel, other times, other relationships. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, since we're Jade, why don't you go next? We'll stick with your box, and then we'll end with Juliana afterward.
Hi. Okay. Well, also looking at our box makes me realize that, speaking of the 2010s, don't we look like we're in a Cobra Snake photo?
Do we?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
The lighting. Okay, so my novel is What a Time to Be Alive. And it is, it's a year in the life of Lola Treasure Gold, who is going through a very difficult year because one of her best friends has died in a thoroughly ridiculous and tragic way. And the grief of that pushes her into kind of accidentally becoming a self-help guru. So the book is, I mean, as with all books, the book is really about someone figuring out how to be a person. And it is very much a book about Los Angeles. It's very much a book about grief and love and belief and understanding what we are doing on this earth. And I'm going to read a very short little section that feels appropriate for right now because the Grunion are running in Los Angeles. Yeah.
What?
Don't know what the Grunion are? All right, well, here, you'll see. Okay, so this comes from the very beginning of the book. It's chapter 1. It is Lola's best friend, who may have been a little bit more. It is his funeral, and she is standing in front of the gathering of people. She's supposed to be speaking, but she just draws a blank. And she says, standing there, she talks about how she has nothing to say. And then she says, standing there, I felt nothing but a strange sort of euphoria, and I could think of only one thing. A few years ago, Alex and I went to Cabrillo Beach for the Grunion Run. I told him about how my mother and I would go when I was young, catching the silvery Grunion as they wriggled their way to the ocean, how we grilled them over charcoal briquettes and feasted on the shore, how I always remembered the feeling of holding a desperately alive fish in my small hands, wet sand squelching between my toes, and the ocean roaring before me. I remembered feeling gleeful and feral and free. He'd looked up the schedule, yes, the fish run on a schedule, and brought a handle of whiskey and a wool blanket. We'd parked, and by some magic, there was no one else on the beach, just the full moon on rippled sand. It was so inviting and otherworldly that we'd left everything in the car and run shoeless across the dunes. At the shoreline were schools of guardian, hundreds of them, thousands, running on biological imperative out of the waves and onto the sand. They were almost too easy to scoop up, so determined to lay and fertilize their eggs that they didn't even consider the possibility of predators. We each reached down and picked up a small, sleek fish, felt it wriggle against the prison of our palms. And then we'd looked up at each other, and what else could you do in that moment but kiss? We did, and then we did again. It felt so good that I couldn't risk him not feeling the same. And so I'd laughed and said, "This isn't what we want, is it?" And he looked at me, still holding that grunion, desperately, desperately alive, squirming in his hand, and said, "Isn't it?" And I shook my head no, and I've regretted it ever since. You can catch grunion on the beach right now and cook them.
Right now. What a scene in the moonlight, the fish wriggling in the hand. Thank you for sharing that.
I also forgot to bring my book, and I looked at all of Jade's bookshelves, and she did not have my book. So
Because I only keep books that I haven't really read. I give away all my
I don't know what that says about this friendship. But I am going to read from my on my new novel that I just turned in. And yeah, I wrote this in Little Dom, so this is very, just like live action. Okay. Chapter 1. I couldn't read the name of the badge clipped to his scrubs. He did not look me in the eye when he said his name was Pang. It was just after 2 in the morning, the sky outside the window a deep, indifferent black. They call this wing the birthplace, which sounded more ceremonial than it felt. My recovery room looked out onto the top of a parking lot. I assumed other women in other rooms lay unwieldy and busted open besides machines and babies, but I hadn't seen them. The only people I'd met were babies, but I'd met were there to work on me. Yet through the walls and vents, in between melodic beeping of monitors, I sometimes heard the faint shriek of babies shrieking. To recover from a C-section, I had to lay on an elevated wedge of foam like a perpetually awakening vampire. The morphine drip directly inserted into my skin leaked onto my hospital gown. I felt like a fleshy, meaty little bowel that had too much filling and now seeped through with oil. Except for the baby, my baby, sleeping in the plastic Tupperware tray next to my bed, I was alone. Pang stood directly in front of me and said, "I need to perform tests on your son. I will be taking her to another part of the hospital." His mouth formed a small, unconvincing smile. "I need to keep him for a few extra hours." The way this man pronounced his words, leaving out some of the letters, and the way he confused the genders, I understood a few things about this man. As he lifted off the tests, I thought I caught a mirrored glimpse of recognition in his expression as well. I decided perhaps we could be better off speaking in Mandarin. I switched first. In Mandarin, I asked about the particulars. Why can't these tests be performed here in the room? How long would they take? Why didn't the doctor say anything to me earlier? Just then, Elliot walked through the door, blurry-eyed and holding in a mouthful of vape smoke, clutching a little ice bucket. "Oh, hey," he said, looking back and forth between us. "What's going on?" "This is the baby's father, Elliot," I said quickly to Pang. I pitched myself upright and pointed at him in an attempt to make him appear more traditional and serious, less like a soft cardigan boy that I had not even been married to. "Hello, Dad. I am Pang."
All right, thank you. It's exciting to hear new work. And congratulations on turning in the manuscript. That's a big accomplishment.
Would have not happened without the the workshop, the Pomodoro, that little dumps.
So we're going to get into all of this. So for those of you watching, thanks for sticking with us. If you have a question and you're in the Zoom room, you can put it in the Q&A and we'll get to it later. But you can be thinking now or put the question in now and we'll hold it there for you. Similarly, if you are watching us on YouTube, you can put it in the chat and I will relay that to our wonderful writers later on. Okay, for now. I've given this some thought, and there's certain questions I want to pose first, and then certain questions I want to pose later. But if this goes in different directions, that's fine. I want to focus more now on like the writing challenges and how you feel supported to tackle these. And in particular, let's start with this question of the second novel. You mentioned that many of you were working, if maybe all, were working on a second novel, and I'm just so curious for you, what was the difference? How was it a different challenge than working on your first novel? And what were the hurdles that you were coming up against, and how did being able to talk it through with each other help you?
I think for me, no one was waiting for my first novel, right? There were no expectations for my first novel. There was no sense even that it might become a real novel or be sold. I think I truly didn't have like an extended writing community with that first novel. And I did have some good friends who had gone to the MFA at Cal Arts, and I feel very grateful to them in terms of being people who were like, yeah, we're going to write novels. But it was just a real wilderness at that time. Whereas with the second novel, there really was a sense of like, oh God, I have something to live up to. I have hopefully people like the first one and they won't be too disappointed in the second one. Hopefully I can work with a lot of the same people. It was a very different amount of pressure and expectation. And I think that having other people who were doing the same thing and who were coming up against the same feelings really made a difference. And also Jean was being a little generous with the dates when she initially sent them. Angela and I actually published our first novels in 2015 and 2016. So we had more anticipatory time, I think, which also made it feel a little more fraught.
Yeah, I think that the first novel too, like a lot of times those gestate for a long time. Like I'd been thinking about my first novel for like 15 years. I'd be like, if I ever wrote a novel, that's what I'd write the novel about. And then like, that's the thing I had to say, and I wrote it and it came out. And then it's like, do I have anything else to say? Like, what out now I have to do it all over again. Like when you're doing your first novel, you're so focused on that first, on publishing a novel, someone allowing you to do it, being paid for it, and it being in the hands of people. And then once that happens, once it becomes possible, then the question becomes, oh, okay, like, am I going to have a career or a series of books in my name? And I think that was the real thing bearing down on me. And I'm only ever going to do this one thing, which is very ungenerous now that I'm saying it out loud. But I think that's why like having the group and being just focused on the writing of that day and not thinking about like, oh God, like, what does it all mean was helpful.
I think that's also why it's so important I think people often look for kind of mentors or people who are more established to be in community with, but I think it's so important to be, talking to and working with and in community with people who are doing the same thing as you.
Yeah, exact same
Yeah.
moment too.
Instead of looking for, some extremely famous writer to,
Joyce
cozy
Carlos,
up to
you?
or something.
She emails me every day. I don't know yeah, to be in conversation with your peers who are going through the same thing, and yeah, you can help each other through it. So thinking about the second novel too, Asia, I liked what you said about, that first book lives inside you for a very long time, and then you wonder, okay, well, what else? Where did it come from? What was the inspiration then for the second book? Like, when did you gel for Asia, for you, and also for everyone, when did it come to you like, oh, this is the thing I want to be working on, and this is what I'm bringing to this group to like, tap away at the keyboard?
I'd taken a short story class with the writer Matt Johnson, and was an apocalyptic story. We were reading apocalyptic stories. We weren't even really writing them. And then one assignment was to write one. Now that we've read a bunch of post-apocalyptic and apocalyptic short stories, write one. And I was like, oh my God, I can like I said, I loved this genre both in movies and in books for a long time. And so I felt like someone had given me permission, and I did it. And that really changed everything for me because it became my favorite thing that I've ever written. And then I started to read more widely. I read Ted Chang, Ling Ma came out with her book, and I saw Emily St. John Mandel, like what could be done in the space. And I did it. I wrote another story, and that one kept getting longer and longer. And then eventually my agent I had written a bad 100 pages of a second novel, and she read it and she was like, why don't you just turn that short story into a book? And that's where that came from.
Can I ask you a question, Asia? So what part of the novel was that? Because I don't know this. What part of the novel
same.
was that short story?
I never even tried to publish it because it's like 40 pages long, or it's like 30 or 40 pages long, but it's when they get to Marfa and he goes in the time bath for the first time, and the wife's like, what the hell are you doing?
Okay.
Like, and he's like, I have to go back. And then it kind of ends with them breaking up. And it's sad in the way short stories can be sad, where you're like, well, that's life. When you do a novel, you gotta end on a
Have more
upward.
reason.
Yeah.
You keep to end on an upward?
Antonia Nelson told me that once, where she said short stories can be, I don't think there's no rules, of course,
Okay.
but short stories can often end on a downer because they're like a little sliver, and then it is sort of like, oh wow, that's sad. And it's asking for you for like an hour of your time at most.
Sure.
But when you're reading a whole novel, it's similar with a movie. You're asking someone to sit down for a long time. At the end, you kind of gotta give them something. Yeah.
Yes, it's true. It's true. You do have to.
I don't
give
think
them
that's a
something.
hard and fast rule, but like I think that's common.
You could decide you wanted to give them sadness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I gave them a lot of sadness in the book.
I think like Gina and I are both like primarily short story writers, right? Like I feel like I'm really obsessed with like the short story form. Like I feel like for the first book, it was just like there was this thing I loved that I felt like I spent my whole 20s like swimming in it, like reading it, thinking about it, trying to figure it out. And the second book had to be a novel. So it was just I don't think I feel like the second book, like it had this, like, we talk about all the time. It's just like we keep creating characters. Like I know like there's some moves that I always do with a short story that I'm really comfortable with. And then like when I'm doing it in a novel, I'm like, oh no, I'm just creating characters. The reason why I think like the second book is so daunting is often, I don't know, for me personally, because like it has to be a novel and I had to relearn how to write a novel. I don't know how you felt about that.
I mean, I think I'm because I'm still in the middle of writing the second novel, but I remember, last fall, when Angela and Jade and Asia's books came out, I remember Julie and I having this conversation of like, wow, our best friends did it. They wrote their second books, and we literally saw them doing it at Little Dom's. And obviously when we were at Little Dom's watching them write their second novels, there's an intellectual understanding, like they're typing words and sentences into their computers. But to actually see it come to fruition, there was, at least for me, like this greater like emotional understanding. And then I think if it was so like it made it feel so possible, because writing a novel, even though you've already written one book, the second one feels so hard, because I think as Jade was saying with the first one, no one's waiting for your book. So you're just doing it out of like, part of it is your own ego, part of it is your own passion, and you just like want to do it because you're so like hungry for it. And then your second book is sort of like, okay, am I going to have a career? Like Asia said, like what's going to happen to me for the rest of my life? And so seeing three of our like beloved friends go through this process, we talked about this. It was just
their
like
hair got really messy, and then they were like,
it was like they did it. So like I remember literally being like, it's possible.
Yeah.
We can do it too.
Yeah, just like
we're gonna do it, you know? Yeah. So it was very inspiring. And so yeah, it was just it's lovely to be inspired by your very close friends and not have to see like some like, you know, Joyce Carol Oates figure, you know.
I hope
I
she's
remember
well.
when
God bless Joyce Carol Oates.
Yeah.
I know a
The
figure like Joyce Carol Oates figure. I remember when Jade turned in her manuscript. We were at the Ace Hotel. We sometimes worked in various hotel lobbies.
The line.
The line.
Or
Yes.
sorry, not the Ace
Yeah.
Hotel, excuse me,
Yes.
the line. And uh she pushed send, but she had to turn it into a PDF.
Mhm.
And then she pushed send and we just screamed because it was kind of like we couldn't believe that
I
we
was so glad you were there. It was like so thrilling to have someone there with me in that moment. Yeah.
yes.
And
I
then
will
we had
never
shots of
forget it.
tequila.
Did we take a shot?
Yeah.
Yes, we took shots. Um, and it really did feel the concept of like incremental work adding up to something in that moment. It just felt like, oh, these self-help people who say like the things you do every day are kind of like, they add up to something. It's true. And I think that there is also for a lot of people, especially in these nowadays, when so many people when writing is being kind of more professionalized earlier and so many people get degrees, the first books, at least part of them, are often written under the auspices of like a graduate program or something. And so that is like another challenge to doing the second book is like you have to do it like a real grown-up writer. You don't have nobody cares if you don't do it. Like nobody cares. You're not getting a degree. No one's withholding a degree. And so that was just something that I try to remind myself still. I'll say that I also have tried to recreate the Pomodoro magic with other people.
How's it been?
Um, I feel like I'm cheating on you guys. I'm so sorry. But I have not been
We want you
successful
to share
yet.
with everyone.
I have not been successful yet. Like I need to find somebody who's working on their third book. Like it just feels like there were so many things that aligned that I have not been successful yet, but I'm still courting some people. So maybe it will.
We have a question in the chat about the Pomodoro specifically. So now seems like a good time to bring that up.
Mhm.
I think I read in the article that it was like a modified like 40 minutes, and maybe the typical is more like, I don't know, 20 or more. I don't know. So they're asking like, what's the ideal time? What did you find? Did that change over time? And then setting, where have you tried this and where has it worked well for you?
So it's the name, the Pomodoro. We did not come up with the Pomodoro method.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened that we did it at an Italian restaurant, so that felt very appropriate. But it's named after the kind of iconic Italian kitchen timer, which is in the shape of a tomato, and that's what Pomodoro in Italian means, is tomato. And you twist it, and I think that it's always I could be wrong, but I think it's a 20-minute timer. And to be honest, I've never seen one of those clocks in person. I've only seen little videos of them. But I do think that the prescribed method that people have is a 20 on, 5 off. 20 minutes, I think, is not quite enough time to like truly get into a writing moment. So I was always agitating for 40 or 45 minutes. Angela was always trying to take it down a little bit less.
I like
I
30.
think 25 minutes is nice, but also it's because 25 minutes is enough time for me to feel the urge to write something and then feel like the urge to run away. So,
Mm,
so I guess I do need longer than that, but
But yeah, I
they
think it
might be
kind of
right.
depends on like who you're working with, how much you want to chat. We also wanted to chat so much that we needed the writing times to be longer, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
great.
And locations,
Oh, right. Sorry, what was the location part of the question?
settings.
Yes, they're wondering, other than Little Dom's, where might you use the Pomodoro technique? Wherever you're writing?
Yeah, any coffee shop. You
We
could
do
do
a
it at
lot of
home.
hotel lobbies.
Hotel
We've done several
lobbies.
hotel lobbies.
Yeah.
Hotel lobbies are great because
You don't
you
have to buy
don't really have to
anything,
buy anything. Yeah.
and they don't care how long you sit there. They don't know if you're a guest there or not. Um, we've never done it at someone's house. Let me
No.
say that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's not true.
No, we have. At Justin and Davey's house.
Oh,
Once
right.
Jean did it at Julie's house when Julie was out of the country. Jean and I did it. And then that's when Jean discovered that I also need to use an app to block my internet. And she turned to me and she said,
Oh.
"You really have no self-control, do you?" And
But
I
we
said, I don't. It's fine. I know
You know,
myself.
okay, so do you guys know about this thing called the brick that everyone's talking
have
about
one.
now? The thing where you have to, it's like a physical thing where you block your phone. And I'm like, just put your phone in a drawer. Like put it in the
I
other
have
room.
one.
Have you really, you can't control yourself from looking at your phone?
No,
No,
Jean,
Put it in the other
you
room?
have more self-control and more ability to
You
just
do.
sit down and write than almost anyone I've ever met in my life.
Mm.
And you should be very grateful that
Yeah.
that's how your brain works.
I don't know. If I just put it in a drawer in the other room, then I think it's because I don't want to get up and walk to the other room. I'm so lazy.
No, don't try to pathologize
And the
it.
other thing is every time I go look at it, I'm like excited. And then I'm like, no one has texted me. Like you guys haven't replied to my text. So I'm like, can we talk about traders? No one wants to talk about traders.
I mean, there happens to be a trial right now in LA about how addictive, our phones have become and all the apps on them. So give yourself a little grace, but definitely, like Jean says, put it in a drawer. That helps if you're not physically looking at it. Um, okay, let's shift this a little bit. We had another question come in about reading for pleasure. And I'm personally interested in what you have to say about this. So, do you all read for pleasure while you're working on your novels, or do you take a break? If so, how do you balance taking in others' creative work versus working on your own?
Yes, I'm always reading 5 books.
Yeah, same.
So I have my reading that I'm doing for the book that I'm writing. So right now I'm working on a historical novel about a lynching in the 19th century. So I've read a lot of historical texts. I've read ghost story novels. I've read horror novels. And then I'm always reading a book of poetry. Um, and then the pleasure reading, I think you always have to give yourself space for that because if writing and reading feels like work, then it's just too tedious, you know? And I feel very lucky too that I have so many friends who are also writers who are all there, people are always coming out with new
Yeah.
books. So there's a long to be read pile. So people who say that they don't read when they're right, I can't take that seriously.
I'm the same. And I feel like there's usually a book that I feel like is like friends with my book. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and also I try to read like when I'm writing in first person, I try to only read in first person. If I'm writing something in third person, I try to do that. And I feel like if I'm also working on an essay, I try to read things that are like kind of I try to feel like I'm having a conversation with whatever I'm reading. So if it's like I'm writing an essay, then I try to read a book of nonfiction that's in the like the first in some sort of like vein, so we can like I can just like pretend like I'm talking to this first person like essay.
Yeah.
Angela?
Okay. That's so interesting. Julie, I didn't know that. I think I am actually the exact opposite. Because I wrote this last book in first person, which is quite new for me. I haven't really written very much of anything in first person before. I don't like reading something that feels like the thing I'm writing. So I read a lot of novels and short stories in first person before I started writing, and then it really took me a long time to kind of try to find the first person voice that I wanted to use. But while I was actually writing it, I didn't read anything in first person. In fact, I kind of tried to read things that were a little bit older, you know? It kind of, yeah, I didn't want to read anything that was that contemporary. I think also I really think of input times and output times. And when I'm writing, it's definitely an output time. And I will have already like had so many thoughts and ideas and little scenes that I wanted to write, and just so much that I am excited to put into something. And I want to, when I'm writing something, spend it all, put it all in, you know? And so now I'm in a real input time where I just am so curious about everything that's happening in the world. Yeah.
I read a lot when I'm writing. I also think that I try to read books that feel like they're friends with my books. I like to ask a lot of people recommendations for things to read. Like right now, I'm working on like a nonfiction book, so I'm reading all of these memoirs and just remind. Like I also am interested in books that for some reason feel like they shouldn't work and they do. I am a person who am very interested in like books that are not following whatever rules I may have been taught about writing. And so those are the kinds of books that I tend to gravitate toward because they're useful for me to just think more expansive about like what's possible and feel like there's something to be discovered. Um, People who say like they can't read when they're writing, I find that crazy. Like I find it to be like, is it intimidation? Like what? It just feels like I'm always reading. You know what I mean? I understand like perhaps you're not reading to the same amount, but it's just like reading is like it's like flossing to me. It's just like what kind of mental hygiene do you have if you've decided I'm not reading anything? That to me that seems suspicious.
Listen, some people don't floss.
And that's a problem for their whole body, not just their mouth. You know, there's a lot of research on that.
Mental floss. Yeah. Um, okay, we've been talking a lot about the writing piece. I want to talk a little bit more now about the togetherness piece and how how it feels different, or what does how does it serve you to be in community, to be in group with other writers. Um, I know that I talk to a lot of like very beginning writers who are just like working on their craft or finding their community. They're at the very beginning stages of like kind of developing their wings. And you're all kind of wind beneath each other's wings. And so I'm wondering just like so many things. Like, what questions do you bring to one another? What support do you get from one another? What does it feel like to have each other's backs? And does it change? Sorry, this is a run-on question. Does it change how you are taking risks, or your discipline, or your productivity? I want to know all these things.
I think for me, these friends are such a safe space, and
Yeah.
I can truly say anything, you know, like when I feel like I'm such a failure because I had a bad writing day or a bad writing week, I can talk to these friends and, you know, one friend will be like, you got this, keep pushing, I love you. Another friend will be like, yeah, you are a bad writer, you know, and it's gonna get worse. it's gonna get way worse from here. You're not even at rock bottom. So,
Oh man.
having this group of friends, it's like it's such a beautiful perspective, I have to say. So, because you don't want friends who are only gonna just like blow smoke up your ass, like
Yeah.
these are real people. We're not just friends who happen to be writers. We're like actual genuine friends. And Angela, we love you so much. Like we wish you would move back to LA.
Yeah, we miss you.
So
I love you all so much. It is 10:40 p.m. and I am here with you.
She's doing the work, all right? Like she showed up.
She doesn't stay up late either, so this is real friendship. I was gonna say logistically, like the business part of it, I feel like even at Little Doms, we like co-wrote a lot of emails, or at least I was always like, how do I write this email to my agent? How do I write this email to my editor? Or like they sent me this note. Is that an appropriate, how do you think I should respond? Or like, do you guys like this cover? Like, how do I say I don't like this cover? Just that kind of thing, like stuff I can't ask my husband, like I can't ask any friends who aren't writers. They wouldn't get it or understand why it's monumentally important that I talk about the font, like that kind of
so
stuff.
important.
Yeah,
I can't believe anyone would question that.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a gut check
Yeah.
always available is really nice, and I recommend it.
So we have a question now coming in to our panel. More specifics, like what was a typical agenda? I'm so curious. Was the agenda like written down? Like a book
Yes.
that you would like have to write it? It's like entered into the agenda and now this is the thing that you must do.
No, it was a piece of paper ripped from someone's notebook, that it would be in the center of the table, and then throughout the 45 minutes that we were supposed to be writing our novels, it's like silent in those 45 minutes. But then throughout those 45 minutes, you could take a pen and add things to the agenda. And they could be like, what did you think of, last night's episode of whatever we were watching? Or, my child I'm trying to get my child into this preschool. What's the narrative I should put into my personal statement or whatever? So it was like, it ran the gamut. Or like, what did you think of this book? So it was a physical list.
What
Or
was the
you could say
wildest thing
comfort.
that got put on the agenda?
Maybe
Sometimes it would just be like very vague, like bread, like
Bread.
The
we'll be like, what is bread? And then we'd have to wait until the break.
Yeah, I think having the like tantalizing element of like, oh, we're gonna find out what it is. Okay, this is gonna keep me going. That was fun.
Yeah, there were a lot of spicy things on that list, Cody. We can't tell you.
Okay, you have to
Yeah.
be there. I get it. You have to be there, to really
Yeah, and
enjoy
some
it.
of them were sometimes just like, why are men?
Mhm.
You would have to wait to the break to find
I
out.
mean, if you found an answer to that.
Always take that physical piece of paper home with me because I didn't want to leave it at Little Dom's where it
Oh, God.
be
Oh, I
right-
have some still preserved. Yeah.
But if you're asking like what happens is like someone texts someone in the morning and is like that eventually started a group chat, but like we're working today. Where are we working? More often than not, for a period of time, it was Little Dom's. Sometimes it's other places. We show up. I'll be there by 10. Okay, I'll be there at 10:30. Show up, get coffee, do a little download, and then someone's like, okay, should we start? Yeah. Okay, 40 minutes, 38, 45. And the fun fact is I have never done a timer. I've never done it.
Oh, you've never
have
been the
never
person to set the
volunteered to set
timer?
the timer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but now I feel like I just can't. I shouldn't. Someone else is always doing that. So, and then we do that, and then hopefully one of the breaks we try to make it line up with lunch. So then we'll eat lunch on a break. And if someone comes in the middle of a Pomodoro to sit down, sometimes we'll break for like 5 minutes, welcome them, talk, download. Okay,
But
we gotta
not
go back to-
really, right?
Usually we keep
yeah,
on the
you just
timer.
kind of stay in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And often the goal is to do like 4 or 5.
5. I've never done 5.
I-
I feel like we always did at least 3,
Yeah.
sometimes 4.
Yeah.
And
I
how
have done 5 with Jade.
Well,
Wow.
I have I have kids. Some of us have kids to pick up and stuff like that, so we couldn't stay later.
Hi, I've been enjoying this conversation so much. I think it's getting late, but I do have one final question that I wanted to ask, which is, it's so obvious you are all friends. Are you still gathering regularly? Do you still write together? Are the Pomodoros still going? Or do you just meet for other reasons? What does that look like?
This is when I cry. Go ahead, friends.
We're all in
Aw.
the same place,
You
right?
were the
Just
one
on
who-
different computers in different rooms.
We meet all the time. And then, because Asia and Jade and Angela have been on book tour for the last 6 months, they have been meeting up in various places. And we've been following their wonderful books being
Yeah.
launched. But in LA, we do still meet up, of course. So, yeah.
Just back at Little Dom's not that long ago. Yeah. So we definitely, yes, we still continue to work, even though I think Asia and I both have not yet started a new novel.
Don't even have what is
So I felt like
don't know.
a pang
New
of
novel.
anxiety just thinking about it. But there are other like writing projects and things like that that we're both working on. And yeah, we've definitely continued it. It feels very productive for
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
And
Angela will be here for the LA Times Festival of Books next
Yes.
I
month.
will be.
So
Oh,
we
excellent.
so we will all be together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I want to thank. Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Angela.
go ahead.
Well, I wanted to thank all of you for sharing all of these practices, stories, because I think there are so many writers out there who can look to what you've done and created as a model for how to be in community with one another and to have a writing practice that's like in solidarity with other writers. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm just so grateful that you came here to share it with us tonight.
yeah, this is one of my favorite conversations that we have had for WeHo Reads, and it is just such a pleasure to have you all be a part of it. And you are all inspiring, so thank you for that.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. This was
I'm
lovely.
inspired that West Hollywood has this program. It's so
Yeah.
cool. Thank you for inviting us. It's amazing.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Coach,
wonderful
for the amazing
night.
moderation.
Yeah.
Have a
Yeah.
wonderful night. And I can't wait to hear about what you come up with next.
Thank you.
Thank everyone.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, Jen, for the poem.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Wonderful.
Bye. Good
Everyone, have a
night.
wonderful night. Thank you. There we go.